that said that societies had underinvested in productive capacity around natural resources for at least 2 decades, probably three. And that the consequence of that was that absent a global recession or depression, that within 5 years, we were going to arrive at shortages of various natural resource commodities. In particular, at the time of that discussion, I was talking about the global oil market, pointing out that as a consequence of people's carbon concerns and decapitalization of the oil industry and the very low oil prices that we experienced as a consequence of the COVID-inspired decline in travel, that the oil industry itself was deferring between $2 and $3 billion a day in new project and sustaining capital investments in the oil and gas space, and that the upshot of that would be increased oil prices. I wasn't prescient enough at that point in time to envision a war that saw one of the largest oil and gas exporters in the world come offline. But the circumstance that we're seeing throughout the commodities supply chain talks about just how tenuous that supply chain is. If you look at Russian production of platinum, of palladium, of nickel, of copper, of coal, certainly oil and gas, what you see is a supply disruption that cannot be met from redundant supplies elsewhere. It simply cannot be met. And what you need to understand about circumstances around capital-intensive businesses is that our ability to replace that supply is going to be measured in decades without peace. The idea that, as an example, Russian supplies of nickel are constrained, so you're going to go build a bunch of nickel mines, forgets the fact that the Russian nickel mines, the Norilsk mines, are the best and highest quality mines in the world. That to replace them, we would need to go find the nickel deposits, that we would need to permit the nickel deposits, which in the United States or Canada would be a 10 or 15-year challenge, finance the nickel deposits into production. In other words, we can't impact the supply side for 10 or 15 years. I'm one who believes eventually that saner heads will find their way out of this confrontation in Ukraine and Russia. At least I hope so. But I think the instructive part of this is it's shown just how tenuous the supply chain is. If you look on the demand side, Adam, as we talked about 9 months ago, absent a recession or depression, demand is guaranteed. There's 7.7 billion of us on Earth. World population is growing. And increasingly, people at the bottom half of the demographic pyramid in the world want to live the way that you and I live. We've been successful as a species over 30 years, lifting the poorest of the poor to the extent that they have more disposable income. And when they have more disposable income, they want a higher material standard of living, which means they want more oil, they want more copper, they want more coal, they want more steel. And we are probably in no moral position to deprive them of it. Think about 1.2 billion people on Earth who have no access to electricity. Think about 2 billion people on Earth who experience electricity poverty, meaning intermittent or unaffordable electricity. All of these people want electricity. All that means that there's going to be more demand for energy. All forms of energy. You know, solar, yes. Wind, yes. Nuclear, yes. Oil, yes. Gas, yes. Coal, yes. A few days ago when we kicked them out of the SWIFT system, we, in effect, anticipated this. The Russians aren't going to sell it to us if we can't pay them for it. And so the fact that the Russians were cut off effectively from US dollar denominated banking actions around the world meant that Russia's ability to sell stuff to people and other people's ability to pay them for it was already constrained. This reminds me a bit of the president of Mexico saying that next year Mexico was going to shut off oil exports because they needed it for domestic consumption. It's because they haven't invested in their oil industry for 30 years and they don't have any oil to export. So what Biden said today and what Putin said today were very much political posturing. They were very much trying to gain political advantage from a circumstance that has been in place for a week. We haven't faced all the consequences that we're going to face out of what happened a week ago. As an example, in the uranium market, the Russians are responsible, I think, for 15 to 18% of primary uranium production in the world and 40% of enrichment capacity, as an example. And although they aren't dominant in the world oil and gas business, they are certainly dominant in terms of providing natural gas to Europe, which after all is still in winter. So I'm not trying to minimize the impact of this. I'm only trying to say that the political action that Biden took and Putin took today were sort of irrelevant. I think it's going to be massive. I don't think that anybody really understands, despite people studying this circumstance for a long time, I don't think anybody really knows or understands what the ultimate repercussions are going to be. I need to say, Adam, over time, high prices are the cure for high prices. When oil prices stay high for a long time, people do an interesting thing. They conserve, and other people find a way to produce more. But until you have convinced people to conserve, and until you've convinced other people to produce more, the dislocation, particularly in the European markets for oil and gas, are going to be interesting. They're going to be much more interesting in platinum and palladium markets, where the Russians are sort of 40% of supply. In nickel markets, the repercussions for this, provided that there isn't some way out, some political way out in the near term, are hard to calculate. I think that there's important strategic buying in some raw materials, platinum and palladium as an example. The value of the platinum and palladium relative to the finished price of the product is so low that supply is what's important. Price isn't important. At current prices, it probably takes $200 worth of palladium to sell a $50,000 car. If you need that catalytic converter to sell the car, you have to pay any price for the platinum. It doesn't matter. And so there's a lot of price elasticity relative to demand. In those circumstances, people are less price sensitive and more supply sensitive. The same in the very near term with nickel, although it appears that there was a very big nickel short squeeze that took place. There was a tight physical market and there were financial interests that were short. And those people are having an almost religious experience with regards to their short squeeze.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.